Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
Yeah.
Live event's happening right now. I'm loading onto the map. Down.
Live event in Fortnite, apparently. What's going on, guys? It's Filthy, and I'm back with another video. Today we're taking a look at the Firebird's Finery, which is going to be the starting set for the Wizard. So we're only using 800 Paragon, we've got absolutely trash gear, and we can clear GR90 with a few minutes to spare, and if we had better gear, we would obviously do it much quicker. When I say bad gear, I mean non-ancient weapon, non-ancient offhand, wrong multiplier rolls in terms of meteor damage rather than Hydras, and yeah, we're going to be using fire Hydras because it just basically means that we can make the build really tanky, which has always been one of Firebird's problems for me. If you didn't have an elite ignited, you would be squishy as hell, so very easy to play, really low requirements on the gear. But before we do jump in and take a look, I'd like to welcome anyone who's new to the channel. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. As always, guys, a thumbs up greatly brightens my day. Now, Firebirds is the starting set for Season 21, and we'll go through the bonuses and then sort of show how we're going to iron out some of the issues with the build. So the two-piece, when you die, a meteor falls from the sky and revives you. This effect has a 60-second cooldown. This is basically a free cheat death, so not great for a two-piece, but we'll take it. It lessens the need to take Unstable Anomaly in our passives. The four-piece, dealing damage with fire, basically one skill causes an enemy to take 1000 weapon damage as fire per second for 3 seconds. So you hit with a fire spell, 1000 weapon damage per second for 3 seconds. This effect can be repeated a second and third time, but with different fire skills. An enemy is burning due to these 3 different fire skills at the same time. The enemy will ignite, and it will then take 3000% weapon damage per second until they die. Now, what this basically means is that you do a little bit of damage when you hit with the first fire spell, a bit more damage when you hit with the second, but it's only when you get all 3 fire spells on that you get this ignited effect, and it's like a bleed over time, but it really isn't terribly good. Now the 6-piece, we get a damage increase of 200% and damage reduction by 3% for every enemy that is ignited. This effect can stack up to 20 times. You always receive this maximum bonus whenever a nearby elite monster is ignited. So these are your Firebird stacks basically. You have to set a monster on fire with 3 separate abilities, you then get a Firebird stack. If you get an elite, you just have to set the elite on fire, ignite it, and then you get the full 20 Firebird stacks. And one of the issues here is your maximum damage is 4000 as a modifier at 20 stacks, which isn't that high in today's game. You know, most of the other sets have got better multipliers. 60% damage reduction again only applies at 20 stacks. So what happens is you ignite an elite, if you get too far away from it or you kill it, your damage reduction drops and your damage drops, and both those things hurt quite a lot. So we've made some choices to try and iron this out, make it as easy as possible to play. Now we're going to take the Crimson set with us as well, so this will give us extra cooldown on the 2-piece, an extra resource cost reduction on the 2-piece as well, 20% for both of those. On the 3-piece, more resource cost reduction is more damage reduction, more cooldown is more damage, so I haven't really rolled for any cooldown on this build, but you could do and you could get some extra damage. Now what are we going to do? Well, we're going to take the Hydras, so we're going to go for Serpent Sparker. We get 1 extra Hydra, so we can have 2 out at a time, and they deal 300% extra damage. We're going to channel, but we're also going to still take the Magistrate Helm, so this goes in the cube. Your Hydras now periodically cast Frost Nova, which is very important. This is how we're going to stay alive, and they deal 300% extra damage. Now rounding out the cube, we also have the Rogue to make up the Firebird's bonus, and also the Crimsons. But we're going to take the classic channeling items, so a Deathwish sword, and also an Etched Sigil. Now these have been recently nerfed, so you have to channel for at least 1 second to get the benefit from it. And that's kind of one of the reasons why Firebird Meteor is probably really difficult to play, because you can't drag stuff around the map, because you have to channel for 1 second to get this bonus. So what we're going to do is we're just going to basically set up shop, sit on an elite, be an elite sniper, and just basically melt all the trash and the elite around it. Now, with the Hydras casting Frost Nova periodically, that means we get a really good freeze off. What that basically means is that we can take the Parthen Defenders, and every stunned enemy within 25 yards gives us 10% damage reduction. So we can get huge damage reduction with lots of enemies stunned constantly around us, because stun and freeze work exactly the same. Now what else have we got? We've got a Halo of Carini giving us 80% damage reduction whenever our Storm Armor electrocutes something, which is obviously pretty nice. And we also have Unity, again another layer of damage reduction because we just need it to survive at GR90 and upwards. We also have the Flavour of Time, making sure those pylons get the double duration effect, which is obviously pretty nice. Now you could try Compass Rose and Traveller's Pledge, so the Amulet and Ring combo, but what I found is that the Unity just makes it smoother because if you stand still then you get the double damage from the Traveller's Pledge and Compass Rose, but your damage reduction isn't there and you will find that you'll die. So basically it's just going for the toughness, that's what we're stacking. Legendary gem wise, a Taeguk, when we get this up to 10 stacks, will be giving us a nice over 60% damage increase. We also get 20% armor, which is pretty good. We take a Bane of the Trapped so that we basically get a flat damage increase. Obviously with the Frost Hydras, these will essentially proc the second part of this. You don't have to be right on top of things, albeit it probably is advisable. And we also take Bane of the Powerful just for that little bit of extra damage against elites, and extra damage reduction, which is pretty good. Now, when I say my gear is trash, as I say, non-ancient weapon here, rubbish roll on the multiplier. Again, non-ancient offense not ideal, it rolls with damage, you obviously want damage on there. The multiplier on that's okay. My Path and Defenders have got dexterity on them and only 10%. And then other than that, I've got explosive blast damage on my shoulders, which is obviously doing nothing. I have meteor damage on my helm, which is doing nothing. And meteor damage on my boots, which also is doing nothing. So you would want Hydra damage, which you can get on chest piece and also shoulders and offhand. So obviously more Hydra damage would be more juice, better weapon, better offhand would be more juice as well. But let's have a little look at the skills. So our first fire skill is Arcane Torrent Flame Ward. This is here because we can basically get a 25% damage reduction. So we start off with 15% less damage taken when we start channeling, and this ramps up to 25%. Really helpful for keeping us alive when we sit on a particular mob or group of trash. We're going to go for Mammoth on the Hydra room because it's fire. So this will basically mean that they'll do a bunch of damage because we're obviously juicing up all the fire skills. Again, it's a second stack of fire. Now in the footage I was using Familiar Spark Flint. Again, it's another fire skill, it gives us the 10% extra damage. It just makes it a bit easier to get the ignition going because we do have a fourth fire skill. What I think in hindsight probably would be better would be Magic Weapon, and then probably the rune that gives double damage Force Weapon, so 20% damage. So I think if you swap that out to that, it might well be better, but I was using Familiar in the footage. Explosive Blast Chain Reaction. I've got this on numlock and it just goes off constantly. What I find is that a combination of this, Hydra and Arcane Torrent, make it very easy to get stuff ignited. So even if, let's say, you don't have an elite nearby and you've got a big group of trash, provided you're in the middle of it, you can get sort of 7, 10, even higher number of enemies all ignited, and that obviously pumps your damage up. So you can, in theory, stop and kill groups of trash with this. But again, I probably would just try and look for elites because it is the most efficient way to play. We're going to take Storm Armor for the Hail of Carini, so once this activates and electrocutes something, we get that lovely 80% damage reduction. We also reduce the arcane power cost of spells by 3 when it's up, so obviously really handy for the resource cost reduction. And then Teleport, Safe Passage. This is just here in case we need to reposition ourselves. If we do, we take 25% less damage for 5 seconds, so a little bit of a toughness buff. But remember, if we stop channeling and teleport, we then have to wait 1 second for our channeling bonuses from the Death Wish and the X Sigil to kick in. So not ideal, you don't really want to be repositioning too much. But if you do, you get a little bit of extra damage reduction. Passive wise, we've gone for Unwavering Will, so we get extra armor, resistances and damage when we stand still. Absolutely perfect because we're going to be sitting on mobs in the middle of loads of density and stuff. So extra damage and toughness is brilliant. Illusionist, I've got this in just basically because it's when you're going to get any kind of spike damage, you might need to reposition yourself quickly, so that will reduce the teleport cooldown completely and you'll be able to hop to a new spot. So not essential, but I did find it was quite useful to play with. Blur, again, because Firebird is really squishy, unless you've got something ignited, you don't have that 60% damage reduction, so taking Blur again smooths out a little bit. And Audacity, 30% extra damage for enemies within 15 yards. We're going to be sitting on top of stuff, so this makes an awful lot of sense. Now, we don't necessarily need Unstable Anomaly because of the 2-piece Firebird, that will be handling the cheat death. But you could take this if you wanted that extra layer of damage mitigation. Another good one could be Conflagration, so it basically increases crit hit chance when you deal damage with fire. And that's obviously how we're doing all of our stuff. Now, how to play it. What you do when you get into the Rift is obviously you want to make sure you've got Explosive Blast and Numlocked. You're then going to pop either Familiar Spark Flint or your magic weapon with the Force Rune for 20% more damage. Pop your Storm Armor, and then basically you want to kind of teleport, try and avoid stuff until you get either to a really big group of density or preferably an elite. I would pretty much just go for the elites. You then cast the Hydras on top of them. You can cast these as you move sporadically through the map to freeze stuff and crowd control for you, but the idea is you find the elite, pop the 2 Hydras down kind of a little bit away from each other, and you stand in between them and you just hold down the channel button and wait for everything to blow up. Now, it's not the quickest build in the world, but as I say, 800 Paragon and absolutely junk gear, I don't think it's too bad at all, and I was actually fairly surprised. I did test Explosive Blast, I tested Meteor, I didn't test Archon to be fair, so that is something that, you know, could do another build that you could make with Firebirds, but once I started clearing 90 with this, I just thought, yeah, that's pretty tanky, that seems like a pretty good build. So that's it guys, that's how to run Firebirds in Season 21 to get yourself all the way up to 90. Maybe you could do 95 with better gear, but you're going to be a little thin on toughness still, so that's obviously something to consider. But you can use this to gear off into, I don't know, maybe Veers, maybe gear off into Legacy of Dreams Hydras, and yeah, not too bad. So that's Firebird guys, I'll be back with some more Season 21 build up material just as soon as I can. I hope you're all staying safe, take it easy, peace. Nice.